folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Hello, folks, and welcome back to Chris Wyatt Reports. This is Chris live in central Pennsylvania with a special guest once again who's been on the program in the past. This is the leader of the United Democratic Movement, Major General retired Bantu Holomisa. Sir, how are you today? Oh, it's on mute, sir. Your mic is on mute. There we go. Yes, I have been gallivanting. Speaking of which, I'll be back gallivanting in South Africa again here very soon. Actually, my background doesn't look very good with yours. Let me change it real quick here so that we got a better appearance. Give me something. But thank you for that. I'll be back in South Africa from the 27th of this month until the 28th of February. So I'll be back once again here very soon. Well, people have asked me when I'm buying a house in South Africa, and I said, well, I mean, I don't know. It's up to Eskom. So that's what we're here to talk about today. Just a moment. I'm just trying to get something a little bit better suited to. Let's go with this right here. All right. Does that look a little better? That looks a little better. Okay, there we go. Got you. Okay, your mic, I didn't have your mic on. We had double quad, so I got you fixed now. Folks, we got, that's General Holomisa. Sorry about that. Here we are now. We got everything sorted. I think the audience can hear you now. I was trying to sort that out. Yeah, your guest was muted. Yes, my guest is no longer muted. He was just saying hello to me. The General said that the last time he saw me, I was out gallivanting in South Africa. And then he just said a moment ago that I'm going to have to get myself a plot there. But listen, General, if I get a plot, I don't want an RDP house because it'll come with an empty fire pole and no connections to Eskom. But you know what? Even the connection, it wouldn't be any electricity.
That's true. We're struggling here.
Indeed. In fact, that's what we want to talk about today. So understand that you're trying to take, I don't know if the right word is the lead, but certainly a role, maybe the lead in trying to get some attention from the state-owned electricity provider, Eskom, and from the government because they're not delivering, and it's leaving South Africans in quite a mess.
Yeah, precisely. We noticed that the government seemed to have run out of ideas because this load shedding started around 2007. So which means all these years they've been trying to find a solution and change the goalpost. One day you are told the coal is wet because it was raining. The other day you will be told that people are sabotaging, but you don't see anyone who is charged or arrested. And even those who are accused of dumping or bringing a bad coal to the plant, they are still given tenders to continue supplying. So the state has not taken any reasonable measures to provide vulnerable South Africans with adequate and reliable energy. Whether electricity or any alternative forms of energy, the state, therefore, has contravened its duty to provide energy as imposed by the Constitution. So what we are doing now by approaching the government, we are merely reminding them that the Constitution of South Africa, one of the things which is guaranteed here for the people is water, is electricity. But for as long as they don't come up with answers and tell the people what is going on, what is the reason really. The government of South Africa gave the ruling party, and rather Eskom, they gave them billions of rands to fix the problem. And indeed, 2 big plants were built, Kusile and another one.
Medupe.
But in the middle of that, then a scandal broke out that in actual fact, Hitachi was appointed to oversee this, had partnered with the company, investment company of the ANC. So therefore, the current crisis cannot then be asked for people to pay more. We've been paying every year Yet the ANC has siphoned billions of rands out of that transaction. So we are approaching the president, the government of South Africa, Minister of Public Enterprise, as well as Eskom, to say, don't forget that we have a Bible here in this country called South African Constitution. Tell us, when are you going to bring the lights back? Tell us, when are you finishing? At least 15 years is finished. What have you been doing? The situation is getting worse. Lastly, we are saying the developed world, led by USA, pledged or promised to pay $8.5 billion US for us as a country to move away from fossil fuels to renewables. So we are asking, therefore, what are they ready? What is the state of the play? Is this money here, or are you not going to use to fix this problem we have? If so, where is your roadmap in achieving this? So it's a way of saying we are conscientizing them to say, wake up. Otherwise, one day the grid will fall. And that would be a chaos for the whole of South Africa. Already, the crime rate is picking up because people know the criminals know which hours will Eskom be on and off. So this is why we are writing that letter, sort of demand to say, please, one, what is the cause of this load shedding? Share it with us.
Well, you've hit it spot on. It doesn't sound like you're pulling any punches there, General Holomisa. It's you've touched on one thing that I think is very important here. Well, many things, but the one thing I want to focus on very quickly before we get back to the letter we're talking about there, and that's specifically about corruption, the amount of money that's been poured in. At this stage, the African National Congress has led the nation unopposed at the national level for 28 years. 28 years, nearly 3 decades. And they've certainly had ample opportunity and ample money. As you alluded to, lots of money has been poured into the parastatal by taxpayers through the government. Where did it go? The 2 plants that you mentioned, Kusile and Medupe, those were actually on the table before the National Party left power. They were supposed to be built at some point. And there's been no other effort beyond that to build. In fact, they've been retiring power plants. They had to bring a few back online because their effort to comply with carbon for what's going on in Europe. Where has the money gone? And it's not just this money. All the money that seems to come from outside just seems to disappear. The ANC doesn't account for it publicly. We saw a total of 5.6 billion US dollars between the African Development Bank, 285 million, the BRICS Bank, $1 billion, and the IMF, 4.3 billion in the summer of 2020. That money's gone. Then another $1 billion came from the World Bank last year. Where is this money going? What is the ANC doing with it? And I think you've touched on something that's really affecting a lot of South Africans, and that's the high level of corruption here and the lack of transparency and accountability. Do you think that's a major contributor to the current crisis we're having with no electricity in Eskom, corruption and disappearance and lack of transparency, or do you think I'm being unfair?
I think you have summed it up nicely, because those are the problems we are confronted with. In fact, if the ANC government doesn't respond by Friday, on the 20th, then we said we are going to go to court. Our court papers will now tabulate some of the points we have raised and add more related to the misuse of funds. They have been in power for 30 years. Guess what? They have been using state resources to sustain itself. So we say now time is up. We can no longer tolerate this nonsense. We've just been fresh from Zondo Commission, which also pointed the finger to the ruling party of South Africa, as well as to their leaders. So which means then someone must stand up and say this looting spree must come to an end. So we hope that the comrades in corruption, therefore, will answer us positively and also share a plan. Because in our papers, we will be in a position, if we go to court, to say which loans, how much have you borrowed, for instance, from World Bank, and so on. And this pledged by the Western countries. What is the plan in securing those sources, those monies? We need to see the plan before, instead of relying on them, because the trust issues when you talk up with ANC kicks in immediately. We don't trust them.
Well, I can't say that I blame you on that. You know, the African National Congress is fond of rewriting history, acting as if they were the only ones who participated in the liberation struggle and made everything happen. They forget about the rest of South Africa. While I'm not a fan of the Pan-African Congress, they played a role. Many people played a role. The Black Sash movement, Talon Bezuidenhout, lots of people in the townships, people who never left the country. It wasn't simply an ANC. I mean, I know that the times I visited the Apartheid Museum located down there in Soweto, which I don't think it's even open anymore, but every time I went, it became less and less a history of apartheid and more a history of veneration of the ANC. And they seem to be trying to mislead people about their role. They have certainly made themselves not trustworthy. Now, this letter you're talking about, a group of different attorneys are involved in this. And from what I understand, News 24 reports that UDM, yourself, and the party, the Build One under Musi Maimani, and then policy analyst Lukonia Mguni, and then including the IFP as well, the Inkatha Freedom Party, and the National Union of Mine Workers, NUMSA, and several nonprofit organizations are all involved in this. And you are the folks that are going to be represented by these lawyers. If you don't get a satisfactory response within 3 days, then it's going to go to court. Is that correct?
It's correct. We have said it in the letter that we need a response by 20th. If not, papers will be served on the 23rd, if I'm not mistaken, of January.
Well, here's the thing, sir, and this is the question that I think a lot of South Africans are about. What has taken so long for support? You can't answer this for South Africa, but maybe you can answer in general sense. What has taken so long for folks to realize the gravity of this situation? I mean, the grid is on the verge of collapse. And I don't think most people understand. It's not like you just, the power went down, let's turn it back on. If the grid in South Africa collapses completely, it's not a couple minutes, a couple hours, a couple days. It could take weeks or months to fully restore an entire grid to South Africa because you have all that stuff that's hooked up to the grid. You can't simply turn things back on. It'll trip again. And it's taken so long for people to realize it and so many hours of load shedding in 2022 before we get to this point. But the ANC clearly has known about this. I've read where the statistician general, the former statistician general of South Africa, has said that he was in meetings with Ramaphosa when they made decisions not to fund routine maintenance for Eskom in the past 4 years. They intentionally withheld the funds from the parastatal, and one begins to wonder what's taken so long for the public to galvanize. Is it just the pain has just become so unbearable, or people just apathetic, or maybe the lockdown period contributed to as well and people didn't realize how bad things were? Any thoughts on that, sir?
Well, the people are beginning to press panic buttons because we are told now that we are approaching stage 8. If we are not already there, but they might be hiding that information. So people are a little bit jittery because to switch off your house for 4 hours or 3 times a day is too much. It's getting too much.
Well, it's quite embarrassing, I have to tell you. You know, I was one of the people who was quite angry that South Africa wasn't awarded the 2023 Rugby World Cup. It had the best bid. Ireland had the second best bid. And then lo and behold, it went to France. Don't know how that happened. Sounds a lot like FIFA. But anyway, I was one of those people who's upset about that. And so as a kind of a sot to South Africa, World Rugby awarded the 2022 Sevens World Cup in Cape Town. I was there when I was on my last visit, and I went to it, and I was there for all 3 days. And 3 days in the Western Cape, in the mother city, Cape Town, I didn't have power for a total period of 8 hours every day. How embarrassing is that to hold an international event and I couldn't shower in the morning to go to the stadium because there's no hot water. I couldn't take a shower at night because it was too late. The power was off again. 8 hours a day for an international event. You've got the Grand Prix coming up in Cape Town in February too. This is not only bad for tourism and for the international reputation. As a foreign direct investor, it's not a place I want to put my money in between the money I have to spend for security, hiring guards, cash in transit heist, the power being out. All these things are making South Africa a very undesirable location. And would you agree with that? Or do you think that maybe I'm just being a little too overly emotional about it because I'm not sitting there?
No, there's no doubt that this sends a wrong signal to the would-be investors in our country. Even local people will be doubting as to how they must put their monies under this uncertainty. Right now, small businesses are closing down in South Africa. And this is going to be another problem for the state. And I hope that this time around, they are not going to shift the goalposts again, consult without any tangible plan to fix the problem. Another thing which I think as a country which we must learn, we don't seem to be having what I would call a national interest, because it's worrying when I see trucks and trucks and trucks of carrying coal going to Richards Bay, others going to Mozambique for export. At the time when the international community is saying, South Africa, stop producing coal and stop using coal for energy, for your citizens. Go towards renewables. Fine, it's not a problem. But it confuses now when you see that the coal price, which is being exported, has jumped up to 700%. It's being demanded in Europe, the coal, in China. And then you ask yourself, why are we told not to have our own plant using the coal? But the worst polluters in the world are our resources. So that's why I say at sometimes I think we need to have our own national interest and say, notwithstanding what the world is saying in terms of moving away from fossil fuel to renewables, but let us make sure that this is standard, everybody is doing it. For the USA to say, I want to have a fossil fuel plant which would produce gas, it tells you that we are still far away.
Well, indeed it does, sir. And I think there's not going to be much space between your position and mine. Let me state mine and see if you agree with it, because I think this is a wrong-headed approach for South Africa. So here's the thing. The Germans have spent $500 billion, $585 billion in the last decade trying to transition from carbon to alternative energy. They've only reduced their carbon consumption, increased the amount of electricity generation from alternate sources by 4%. $500 billion. South Africa doesn't have that kind of money. It's a smaller country, but not that much smaller than Germany. And here's the thing. This is my problem with all this. South Africa doesn't have an energy crisis. It has a leadership crisis, in my view, from the ANC. A lack of strategic vision, a lack of commitment, a lack of honesty and transparency, because South Africa has all the energy it needs, either through bituminous coal, methane, coal bed methane, or potentially there's petroleum off the southwest coast now, it appears to be, plus there may be a massive amount of methane off the southeast coast of South Africa, but just the coal resources alone and sun. You have wind and sun. The Karoo is full of sun if they want to do this alternative stuff. But the time to put renewables in was years ago. Now they're just getting around to it, and it's too late because the power is not going to come from that overnight. So my point is that what South Africa should have done, and I've been saying this for 2 decades, going to South Africa and telling people this, is they should have burned coal, get power plants up and running, replace the ones that are 30, 40, 50 years old now with newer ones, and retire those ones that pollute more with more efficient ones, and continue. But the bottom line is that unless people have cheap, affordable, reliable, and efficient power, electricity, they're going to be held back. And that's what's happening in South Africa. So they're kowtowing to the environmentalists and the Western governments by saying that South Africa will transition to alternative energy. But my view is that South Africans should have energy first and foremost. And once you have the luxury of having that people can afford it and your economy can grow and people can stay warm, they don't have to make charcoal and burn that to cook and stay warm, then you can focus on energy transition. And I think they've got the cart before the horse in this situation, and South Africans are paying dearly for it. And as you said, it's in the height of hypocrisy, Europeans who preach to South Africans and the rest of us about carbon emissions are burning lignite in Germany, a very heavily polluting source of coal, far worse than bituminous. And they just destroyed another village to burn that coal. They're going to burn that coal, plus they're importing tons of coal. The Netherlands is doing, and of course, China. South Africa is the world's largest coal exporting facility, that Richards Bay. Isn't that ironic that South Africa has an abundance of energy, yet we're hearing from President Ramaphosa that there's an energy crisis in South Africa? I submit to you, sir, there is no energy crisis. There's a leadership crisis. Thoughts on that? Would you agree or disagree?
I concur with your analysis, but I'll tell you the reason why we don't have leadership is because of of the ruling party, which has usurped the powers of government to deploy people with qualities and qualifications. Right in their head office, the ANC's head office, they have a committee called Deployment Committee. And even the people who are deploying people have no clue what they are talking about. Hence, you'll find that all state departments are collapsing. So anything the ANC touches, it falls down. You talk transport, railway, roads, the infrastructure is gone. And the main reason, and I'm sure even the Eskom is affected by that, is lack of maintenance. They don't invest much on maintenance, whatever structure they do.
Well, that's frustrating because, of course, you know this. I don't know if all my audience knows this, but of course, I've lived all over the continent in Tunisia, Liberia, Botswana, Malawi, Nigeria, Mauritania, Uganda, Ethiopia, all over the continent. And I've frequently seen throughout my travels on the continent this concept of infrastructure, build it and forget about it. The maintenance isn't done, and eventually things collapse. And then people complain that, oh, look, we've been left behind, or we inherited a situation from colonialism, and that's true. But you also got this infrastructure one way or another, and then did maintain it. And that seems to be a big problem here. Now, for this event here, in fact, this letter, if they don't give you the response, and I think they'll be honest, I think Eskom and Pravin Gordhan, the Public Enterprises Minister, are going to be hard pressed to get the responses that you all are looking for. So you're probably going to have to file a court case, I suspect, and they'll probably try to ignore it as best they can. But this effort that you're doing now, along with these other folks, Musi Maimane and the Inkatha Freedom Party and others, that seems to be kind of a show of unity. Did you all come together and coalesce and come to this group of lawyers on your own, or did you get together? And is there any link to this event that's scheduled for the 25th, marching on Latuli House, which the ANC Youth League has dismissed? But frankly, I dismissed the ANC Youth League because the issue is about South Africans and not politics, which is what the ANC Youth League seems to be doing. So did you all get together on your own, or did you come together to get these lawyers, and is it linked to the 25th of January?
No, this matter was discussed informally, not even face-to-face, but through social media, thanks to the people who invented this. And more people bought into it. And then we said, let's hit the ground running. So what we are planning now is that in between 22nd, if they answer negatively, we will have now meet as a group and then talk to the lawyers and strategize how to move forward.
Now, as I mentioned, there's an event scheduled for the 25th. If it goes forward, a march on Latuli House. I don't know if you or your party are going to participate in that. Is that something that you might potentially participate in, this march on Latuli House on the 25th?
We are not going to participate because DA didn't invite us.
Oh, they did invite you. That seems a bit foolish in my view.
That's a DA's march. But as a matter of principle, I'm always against marching to the head office of another political party. Other march to union buildings where the answers will be obtained from there. Because those people who are at Latuli House will say, look at us, we are not getting salaries as well.
Fair point. Yeah, exactly. If they go to Latuli House, the people responsible and culpable for the electricity problem are not in Latuli House. They work for Latuli House for the ANC, and they're in Parliament. That's where you need to go, right? The union buildings. That's where they should be marching. Oh, my goodness. I'm glad you brought that up because that's right. ANC staff members, I don't know if they've been paid yet, but for most of last year, they received no salary.
So they must go to a union building. That's where our taxes are.
Well, maybe somebody could reach out to John Steenhuisen and try to convince the DA to invite everybody to their party and have the party show up at the union buildings. Besides, there's a lot more space at the union buildings, a lot of grounds there for lots of people to show up for a demonstration than there is blocking the streets of Johannesburg at Latuli House. Would you agree?
No. I hold no brief for John Steenhuisen, but he did say that he wants to go to march to Luthuli House because this is where this corruption strategy is crafted. So maybe he's got a point, but it's not attractive for our party.
No, I appreciate that.
But I'm sure when we go to court, there will be a lot of parties, including DA. They might be interested to join as friends of the court, the civil society, others, and so on. I spoke earlier to one of the leader of one of the chambers of commerce in South Africa. They said, "Man, give us the telephone numbers for the person who is coordinating this. We want to give him more reports, the damage which is being done by this load shedding in South Africa."
Well, what you're talking about is what we call here in America, I believe, an amicus brief, a friend of the court filing on it. So it sounds like that there is additional support now that people know about the letter and the potential court case that want to join on. That's some good news. Now, I think what a lot of people don't realize here, General Holomisa, is that, and I've been saying this for a long time because I've lived in Africa where the power comes and goes and it isn't there, and had to provide my own generators and things like that. And I've been well aware of the crisis in South Africa because in 2008, when I was in Botswana, I had to spend well over 50,000 US dollars buying generators for the residences, my staff, because we were already dealing with load shedding then because the platinum industry was growing so fast in Northwest and they weren't putting more generation capacity in as they added more and more homes in the rural area who've been denied electricity in the past. So I already saw this coming back in 2007, 2008, and I warned people about this, but it seems to fall on deaf ears. Now, the point I wanted to make and get your take on this is that it's much more than an inconvenience. People are like, oh, it's inconvenient. And I think we've gotten well beyond that point now. It's not simply the lights go out or you don't have aircon or something like that. This has life and death implications. If hospitals don't have generators that function, you have people on respirators, operations taking place. You have robots, traffic signals that go out, cars running each other, running over pedestrians in the streets, accidents at night in cities, things like that. You have, in addition, something that's never talked about is the lost economic portion of this, the lost business opportunity for things not happening. There was a great story, good job by the Independent Online, running a story about a gentleman who has a business in Soweto in which he makes ice. And this is the high season normally. It's summertime. The temperature's in the high 30s or the low 40s. People buy ice. But he only gets power 40% of the time now. And so he can't produce enough to make a profit. It's just crazy. And here's the other piece, the last piece about this that I think people don't mention. There's many more parts to it. But the economic toll from the damage and the pressure that's put on appliances, electronics, computers. Every time the power comes on and off, it shortens the lifespan, it surges back and forth. And the billions of dollars and hundreds of billions of rand lost as a consequence of that failure to provide safe, reliable, and efficient electricity. All of that takes a toll that I don't think is even being calculated by people. And I think that a lot of South Africans are finally realizing that. But I mean, that's a legitimate concern. Would you agree with that or would you disagree?
I guess that's precisely why they want to get into the streets. I guess that's why people like us are writing letters to them formally, and if no answer, we proceed to court, precisely because this, if you talk about the costs of living across the board, you will go to a store and buy food, and then within hours or a day or so, that food is not worth eating because there's no electricity. So it goes also for hospitals, for security, for the schools. Remember that now we have open schools. Now the kids are sitting there, they can't open their computers, there's no Wi-Fi. It's a chaos, but that's African democracy. In other countries, well-developed democracies, they would have long said, guys, we're throwing in towel. Let's let somebody else come, or let's have early elections and so on. But you are not going to get it here.
Well, and here's another piece before we get a little bit further and probably wrap up here shortly, is that South Africa's problem is not simply South Africa's problem. How South Africa goes, so does the SADC region, Southern Africa. South Africa is an economic powerhouse for Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Eswatini, and Mozambique. And if South Africa is in the crapper, it has a major impact on their economies. We already see it with what happened in the ANC's internal insurrection in July 2021 when Durban was shut down, the impact that had on goods and services getting from the major port of Durban and KZN up into the heart of Southern Africa, a tremendous impact on the economies. And this is having an impact because Eskom provides power in the Southern African power pool to those neighboring countries, and it can't make those deliveries. And again, back to why I had to buy generators in Botswana. So the knock-on effect here is not just South Africans, but the entire region. Yes?
No, I fully agree with you on that. And how I wish that we can look at an energy mix as a country. In South Africa, we've got potential of renewables, potential of nuclear power, energy power, and then we've got coal, we've got hydro from neighboring countries like Mozambique. So if we were to sit down and say, guys, we are not against moving towards renewable energy setup, but we must make sure that there's no gap. So let us work together and achieve this international objective. But plan B is that we must make sure that the resources we have are processed within southern countries instead of exporting them. For instance, we will be in need of batteries in future. If some of those batteries, the raw material is going to come here, South Africa, and be exported to China, and they bring finished products, they create jobs for their people, but here at home, we are jobless. So there is a lot which needs to be taken into account here. Unfortunately, people outside there don't realize that South Africa, as a result of sanctions, its technology is lagging far behind for about 20 years in many areas. I don't know why South African government, when they go to these international conferences and say we are pleading for a few years, don't just club us with those countries which have been developed. But the reality is that our technology in a number of areas is still lagging far behind. But anyway, that's history. Let's look at the future. At 5 to 10 to, I've got another appointment.
All right, then we'll cut it off here in just a moment. We won't get to this now because it's unfair, but just to bring it up when we speak again, people are asking me about your views on multi-party coalitions as we go forward towards 2024. You don't have to answer that now. And then the other thing is you and I discussed talking about the Section 89 report that Parliament shamefully voted not to pursue on the Pala Pala Farmgate scandal. Perhaps we can talk about that next time. And maybe when I'm back in country or shortly, we can get together again. And for those who don't know, General Holomisa hosted me, and we had a brilliant breakfast when I was in South Africa the last time. And I don't know if he has time this time, but I'd look forward to doing that again. Doesn't have to be breakfast. Can be a cup of coffee. Can be a dinner. We could take a movie, whatever you want to do. But I look forward to it, seeing you again.
Welcome, my friend.
All right. With that, sir, thank you very much. And then also, maybe we talk next time about the irony that your party's support comes from a place that's basically the original stronghold, that region of South Africa for the ANC, a party that seems to have a lot of loyalty in that part of South Africa. Maybe we can save that for another day as well.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, folks. Thanks a lot. Major General Bantu Holomisa, member, South African Parliament, leader of the United Democratic Movement. Sir, I'll let you drop off, and then I'll wrap up the broadcast. There you go. And there's a salute from a fellow comrade. Of course, he's well known in South African history. It's a pleasure to have General Holomisa on. I hope that you found this interesting and informative, folks. It was very kind of him to come on. We hit the 30 minutes there, so excellent. He's off to another meeting. And so there you have it. General Holomisa has confirmed that, in fact, the Inkatha Freedom Party, Musi Maimani's 1SA, and a number of other folks, including NUMSA, and additionally, some nonprofit organizations have already banded together informally and coalesced with this group of lawyers to deliver a letter, which was delivered yesterday that was the 16th of January, 2023, delivered to Eskom Andre de Ruyter, and to Pravin Gordhan, the Minister for Public Enterprises, demanding answers to why this is happening and what Eskom can do to fix it and how it's going to be fixed and when it's going to be fixed. My response to that is I appreciate they're doing that, but I don't expect that Eskom is going to give a satisfactory answer. If they do not respond by the 20th of January, that group will file a court case against Eskom for failure to deliver what they're responsible for delivering to South Africans: safe, reliable, efficient, and affordable electricity, which is something they're not doing. And this is all going to happen very soon. And the interesting part here is that General Holomisa said that additionally, there are a number of groups that already approached them and said that we would like to join as friends of the court and file an amicus brief to be part of what's going forward if you file a case. There is a palpable sense of anger on the streets, in the villages, in the towns, and the neighborhoods of South Africa, and with good reason. General Holomisa and I talked about this. We didn't dance around it. He was quite frank about this corruption in the ANC and their misuse of state funds that was intended to upgrade and to repair and maintain power facilities has contributed greatly to the situation. So there you go, folks. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate it. I appreciate your support here for it. And thank you, General Holomisa, once again for your time. It was a great pleasure to have him on the program. I'll be back later today with the news, and then I'll be on to Conscious Caracle's broadcast talking about 2023 in Africa, across the continent, what it's going to look like in Africa, with some predictions and projections of what you can expect here. So Chris Wyatt Africa News will be on later today, half hour earlier than normal. It's at 5:30 South African time. That would be 10:30 Eastern Standard Time here. After that, I'll go live at 7 p.m. South African time, noon Eastern Standard, with the Conscious Caracal on his program. For those of you who missed it, last night I was a guest on John B. Wells' program, Caravan to Midnight, and it was a cracker. If you missed it, you missed it, because it was pretty awesome. I had a great time. John B. Wells was quite satisfied. The audience seemed quite engaged, and that was a wonderful experience. Additionally, on my broadcast this week, I will have Brendy Wells, John B. Wells' wife and a South African, former shark girl. She used to be a shark girl for the Natal Sharks back in the day. She will be a guest on my program talking about South Africa. She lives in the States now, on Thursday. And then there you have it. So that's a little bit of a taste of what's coming up this week. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Oh, one more. I'll also appear on Alex Newman's Liberty Hour here in the U.S. I'll try to get a link out to folks before the next broadcast. That will be on Wednesday. So that's taking place, along with my usual Wednesdays with the Colonel with Ronaldo. Quite a busy week for me as I prepare to travel back over to South Africa on the 26th and arriving on the 27th. For all those out there, I look forward to seeing you for meet and greets, for interviews, and for anything else that takes place. Thank you all so much. And, well, we'll see what happens here with Eskom. I guarantee you that load shedding is not going to stop. It's probably not going to diminish. And South Africa has a serious, serious problem. But I wish General Holomisa, the UDM, the IFP, 1SA, all the folks that are trying to get some action on this, I wish them good luck. We'll see what happens. Okay, folks, thank you very much. Be sure to hit that like button if you don't mind. It doesn't cost you anything but a moment of your time. I was up at 4:30 this morning in order to do this interview. I got to do it when my guest is available, and that's what I did. So thank you very much. I do appreciate your support, and we will catch you later in the day. I'm going to go take a nap and get back up in a couple hours. Cheers, everybody. Have a safe day.